Have a seat. Welcome. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your very, very, very busy schedule. Come talk to the students here. So this is just, I'm not going to ask everyone to go around and introduce themselves, but this is a mix of folks from, mostly in this case, mostly around the United States. From South Dakota to Pittsburgh to Los Angeles, and then a bunch of folks coming in from Connecticut, New Jersey, some folks here in the city, a mix of folks ranging from in college to sort of mid-career, all really passionate about investing, many of them looking to launch their own funds someday. And so my thought in asking you to come and talk is you've just done so much in the investing world, and with Oscar Capital and Skybridge, and also
been fired a few times.
Yeah,
a couple times.
Yeah. So one of the things we teach, and what's really important actually as part of the learning process is teaching people. Okay, what are the things Glenn and I did right as we built our business, but also what are the things that we did wrong. And it's very important to teach people to learn from mistakes, not just from successes, right? So I know how honest you are in just sharing, the ups and downs and so forth. So, maybe just start just sort of very briefly initially give people just a little bit of your background, like where you grew up and how'd you get into the investing business. I don't think your family was in it or whatever. And then
family wasn't in investments.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and put these phones.
Sure, no problem.
And what I'd probably like to do, if that's okay, I'm going to talk for like 10 minutes and then take questions. Is that good? Probably a little bit more learning and more instructive.
And by the way, tell everybody why you have to go, where you're going.
So I don't know if you guys watch late night TV, but I'm debating Michael Avenatti, Stormy Daniels' lawyer, on the Stephen Colbert show. And so I'm supposed to be over there at 4 o'clock, but that's fine.
And is that airing tonight?
I already have enough hair and makeup and stuff.
Is that airing tonight?
That's airing tonight, yes.
Oh my God! Must-watch TV.
It's live to tape, and so obviously Michael and I have different opinions about different things. So should be interesting. And then all of that part of my life is as improbable as any part of my life, frankly. And so I've lived this ridiculously improbable life because I grew up in a sand miners family, and I'll give you a very brief description. My parents are originally from a coal mining town in northeastern Pennsylvania, and they moved out of that town because my father saw an ad to mine sand out on Long Island. And so, not that you need a geology lesson, but they did show this in the Science Times last Tuesday. The glacier, it left Manhattan Island, Staten Island, Long Island, Block Island, the elbow of Cape Cod, and all this other stuff. But the peninsula of Port Washington on Long Island was the highest level, most refined, highest density of granular sand in all of North America. And so Italian, Welsh, and Irish immigrants mined that sand for 95 years, and my dad worked at that company for 42 of those 95 years. He ran a heavy crane and he ran a payloader, and that area now is a golf course. 65% of the concrete that built this building, frankly, came from my hometown because what happened was the Triborough Bridge wasn't built yet, but the 59th Street Bridge was built in 1909, and the 59th Street Bridge is actually the George Washington of the modern skyscraper, because once you could truck the concrete over to the island of Manhattan, because of the granite you're standing on, you could shoot the skyscrapers to the sky. So my father had a very small part of that. 42 years, the same company, was a laborer. But we grew up in a very aspirational working class family because we had high wages back then. That's been the political struggle now. Families like the one I grew up in, their real wages are down about 30%. So if you took my dad's 1975 wages and you price them in 2015, 40 short years later, he doesn't have the purchasing power that family doesn't have the purchasing power that our family did. And that's really the struggle of our time, and that's why you're seeing such political discourse right now. So sitting at that table as a kid, my pops used to say to me, study, do your work, you're going to get into the middle class, upper middle class, and someday you'll be financially independent. But what he didn't explain, because he didn't really understand it, is that the best path to financial independence and the best path to live the best life for yourself is to find the thing that you really love. At the end of the day, you're here for a reason. You probably love finance. You love the concept of hedge fund investing. You dream about building your own business. You dream about being in that pantheon. And at the end of the day, you're here, and most people would come to a class like this because you're an artist. You're not necessarily a capitalist, but you're a capital artist. You want to paint on a canvas of business, and you want to create your own business, and you want to create your own destiny. And so I'm going to say 3 things about a self-diagnostic that you should ask yourself today, and you'll be asking yourself this probably for the most part of your career. So question number one, what is your tolerance for risk and or failure, and how do you handle those 2 things? How do you feel about that? Question number 2, how do you feel at a cocktail party when your scrawny firm that you're starting in 2019 is this big, and your buddies at Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley making a fat 6-figure check, or maybe even more than that, and he has the prestige of that brand name, and you've got this little tiny scrawny company that you're building from scratch? How does that affect you and your social status? Are you a social status sort of person? Or are you a risk taker and a mountain climber, and you're expressing yourself with your own level of artistry, and you don't care about what people think of you at a cocktail party? The third thing, and this is the most important thing, are you a jack of all trades? Because one of the things that happens when you go into your own business, you have to fix the toner. You've got to change it. You've got to fix the copy machine. You've got to figure out who the right IT person is. You're probably not going to be the best person if you're an investor in this room to handle the compliance situation for your firm. And maybe in the beginning, you won't be able to hire somebody in-house. And so who are the best people at the most economic cost to hire out of the house? Now I'm going to break it into another category. Now I'm going to take any question. Okay, these are 3 more questions that you have to ask yourself. Okay. I'm going to tell the first piece in a story. I left Goldman Sachs in 1996, started my own business. It was a very bare bones office that I put the business in because I was super nervous about costs. So number 1, you're an entrepreneur, mind your costs. You have to mind your costs. Mark Winkleman, who was the head of Goldman Sachs Fixed Income, was a longtime client of mine, and he was a client of mine at my new firm. He called me and he said, John Doe, who was a fixed income trader at Goldman, is leaving, and John Doe is going to start a hedge fund, and I want to put some of my own money with him. I want you to go downtown and see John Doe in his new office. And I said, okay, fine, and I want you to evaluate that hedge fund for me. I said, okay, fine. I went into the office, and the office was burled out. It had walnut paneling, and there were zippers, and there were flat screen TVs and fancy pants art all over the walls. I had a very nice, polite conversation with the man, fixed income trader from Goldman. I left, I picked up the phone, I called Mark Winkleman, I said, the guy's very bright, he'll be out of business in a year. He said, what are you talking about? He's the smartest guy at Goldman. I said, but he's not at Goldman. If you have a first cabin mentality, you really can't be an entrepreneur. That's not to say that you won't get to the first cabin, like a Henry Kravis or a Steve Schwartzman, but you're not going to start in the first cabin. You have to mind your costs like you're in steerage. Yep. Second point, you have to fire quickly. Because at the end of the day, you're only going to get a runway, a glide path to grow your business, okay? And if you don't get the right people in the room immediately, you can't allow your passive aggressiveness or your conflict avoidance to allow you to be saddled with people that are not going to take direction from you, work in a team, create the right harmony, and do those sorts of things. And you've got to get people on your team that think in a we and our culture, not a me and my culture. You should write this down because you can take this mathematical, psychological equation to the bank. Ready? Underconfident plus insecure guarantees, this is a postulate, 9th grade geometry. Underconfident plus insecure guarantees paranoia and backstabbing. You see that? And so I don't care where you're working today or where you are in school, the people that are carping and biting and backbiting the other people, they're the people that are underconfident in themselves. They're the people that are insecure. Secure, confident people are trying to lift the other people up, okay? Whitney's been a friend of mine for, I don't know, forever. I'm embarrassed. I'm lying about my age now, so I'm embarrassed to tell you how long I've been friends with Whitney. But the point is, I want to see him succeed. I want him and Glenn to succeed. I want to share in their success, okay? And I don't have any envy or any grievance if he's made $1 gajillion and he's made $1 gajillion more than me. I just hope he'll invite me on his private plane and let me smoke a cigar in his hot tub.
He's being very humble, though. I'm working him for his hot tub and jet, right?
But you need to understand that, and you need to hire people like that.
Yeah.
You have to hire people that breed success and want to share their success with other people. Okay, you have to find people, particularly in a startup, that like the idea of celebrating success. Okay, so I'm done. Those are my formal remarks. I'll take any question. I've been fired twice. I got fired once by Goldman Sachs. I got fired by John Kelly at the White House. Spent 11 days there, or 954,000 seconds. Sometimes
Who's counting?
Sometimes I say it that way to make myself feel better. But that was politics. He wanted me out of there, and he convinced the president to get me removed, and that happens. And you can't. Here's the other thing: no whining, no bitterness, and there's no such thing as injustice, because you're sitting here at the New York Athletic Club. You have already won life's lottery. Okay, if you're in Manhattan, you live in New York, you live in the United States, there are 7-point-something billion people on the world, you've already won life's lottery. And so what we know about life, we know two things about life: it's unfair, and we know it's unsafe. We know that because people are dying around us, and we know it's unfair, we know it's unsafe. And so you can't be an entrepreneur if you're not able to deal with those levels of uncertainty, and you can't be an entrepreneur if you have a sense of injustice about your personality. I got fired from the White House. Some people said, wow, you got treated really badly. No whining. Don't care. Already won the lottery. You got that? You have to think like that in your lives from this day forward. And so when a setback happens, and I predict this, you are going to start your business, or maybe you've already started it, you have a whole list of the 1,000 things that you think are going to go wrong. And you're all smart Alex and smarty pants people, so you have an answer for all 1,000 of those things. But you know what the problem is? 1,000,000 things are going to go wrong. An entrepreneur is somebody that jumps off of a cliff and is trying to build an airplane on the way down. You see that? And so you're going to have to adapt. I've had to adapt and change my business model. I'm in my 23rd year of entrepreneurship, and every year is a restart, every year is a readaptation, every year is a rebranding exercise, a refresh. You have to think like that from this day forward. Okay, I'll take any question.
And by the way, one of the things on Saturday, this is a 3-day investing bootcamp focusing on the craft of investing,
Okay.
how to make money, avoid losing money, portfolio management, short activism, all that. On Saturday, we teach how to launch and build an investment fund. It's the entrepreneurial side.
Okay.
And one of the things I suspect you would agree is what you just laid out. Some people are they can be great investors. They should not start their own fund because they don't have the wiring, the entrepreneurial chops, the psychology, the ability to deal, the multitasking, the emotional side, the setbacks, whatever. And so to them, they should go keep working at Goldman or at a big Tiger Cub fund and do the craft of investing and do what they love to do, but they should not be entrepreneurs.
So not only do I agree with that, or you have to find somebody that has that skill set that you can marry yourself to.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, you don't have a license. As smart as we all think of ourselves as being, we don't have a license on everything. And so what we have to do in our lives, we have to be very, very clinical and very objective about our own skill sets. And then we have to figure out ways to marry other people to us that have differentiating skill sets. And then we have to have confidence as a leader to allow those people to do their jobs. One of the things, I had big problems with Reince Priebus. I had nicknames for him, being taped, so I won't give you the nicknames.
We've already read them.
But you can Google the nicknames again. But the thing about this, and I tried to tell Reince this, the way you create power for yourself, is by giving it away. So you understand that? Because the more power you give away, the more enfranchisement that your people feel, the more committed they're going to be to the organization, and the more broad your attack can be in the universe. At the peak of Skybridge, before I stupidly left Skybridge to join the administration, we had the Wall Street Week show, we had the SALT conference, we had a newsletter, we had a $11.5 billion under management, onshore and offshore. and we were entering into the financial intelligence space. So we were doing all 5 of those things, and I was raising money for a presidential campaign at the same time. And I'm telling you right now, those things are completely and totally impossible to do if you're one person. But you can empower people around you. There's nothing that you can't do. Ronald Reagan had something on his desk in the Oval Office, which I bought at the Reagan Library, and it's at my desk at Skybridge. It says there, you can go anywhere you want in life, as long as you don't care who gets the credit. Anywhere you want. And so you have to be always in the empowerment business when you're running a business.
Questions?
You can talk about investing too. I can tell you,
Tell us,
I can tell you a lot about my
you
experience.
talk, when you left out of Goldman, you said you started your own business. This was Oscar Capital, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you partnered up, there were 2 of you. Andy was the guy who's, nose down and did the investing side, and you were the public face of the business. You raised the capital, and so just that's an interesting.
So we married. I was more operational. I was more marketing inclined. He was more money management inclined. He was more siloed into securities analytics and trading and those sorts of things. And we had a very, very good partnership. We're still very, very close friends today. We ultimately sold that business to Newkirk Berman, which is a wealth manager in Midtown. They just moved over to 6th Avenue maybe 2 years ago, but they were on 3rd Avenue. And we had very good harmony in our partnership, because like a good rock and roll band, you need a lead singer, you need a drummer, you need a bass guitarist, etc. But unlike most rock and roll bands, don't get your ego in the business. Once your ego gets in the business, Paul and John Lennon, they start shooting at each other, then it's over. And that's what happens, right? Keith Richards and Mick Jagger have shouted at each other for 60 years, but they're smart enough to subordinate their egos and get out and play together. You can't allow your ego. Every decision that I have made in my life, take this to the bank, where I've inserted my pride, my ego, and some level of anger or emotion, has 95% of the time been a bad decision.
Okay. In my case, hubris, like letting, like when you were talking about your ego, just being overconfident and.
Opte obia nemesis. Okay, so I had every answer imaginable. I just want you to think about it. I'm 32 years old. I launch Oscar Capital with Andy Bozar. We raised $200 million. And Whitney's old enough to remember this. We not us, but the market was just on a constant rise, 97. So the market went up 28%, the S&P 500 in 1997. We were levered long and geared to the market. We went up 80%. First year. So that should have been a good start. That should have been a run for the door.
Kiss of death.
We're running the business a little bit too hot. Okay. And we took an incentive allocation so that we had $200 million, went to $360 million. We took a $32 million incentive allocation at the age of 32. Okay. Now, thankfully,
split 2 ways.
Yeah, split 2 ways. And thankfully, I stepped out and bought a house, and I did some other things with it, because lo and behold, what happened in 1998, we knew everything. He was George Soros, and I was Julian Robertson. We had the answer to everything. And our smugness and our arrogance and our overconfidence, we were Thelma and Louise. Do you remember that movie? Riding right off of the 1988 cliff. And so on July 24th, the market broke, 1998, and the Private Ryan came out that night, and they were showing the slaughtering that took place on D-Day, but I had already gotten slaughtered that morning, okay, because our portfolio went down 25%
in a day.
In 3 days.
3 days. Oh, okay.
And so I'm embarrassed by this, but I'm telling you this for a reason, because I want you to learn from it, okay? You've got to be very, very careful. Unfortunately for you, and unfortunately for me, you're living in a 100,000-year-old piece of machinery that hasn't had a software upgrade in about 100,000 years. Your phone went from iPhone 1 to iPhone 10 or 8, wherever it's at now, but not you. You still have a lot of atavistic and primordial instincts in your personality. And if you're not careful and you don't dial into a long-term game plan and you don't have a grounding wire, okay, you can really hurt yourself. And we did. Now, we survived it and adapted And I'm here to tell you that the crisis that I experienced in 1998 saved me and saved Skybridge Capital in 2008. Because I saw the tea leaves and I got myself into an under-levered position, and I built cash after the Bear Stearns fiasco in March.
Right.
And I said, okay, listen, this is not going to go well. This feels really bad to me. We've got to get in a defensive position here because I've seen this movie before. And if the movie gets any worse than it was in 1998, we're going to go out of business. And so I took the learning experience from 1998 and I applied it successfully to 2008. So you don't have to shoot the moon. You got to shoot for singles and doubles, and entrepreneurs think incrementally. If you're out here imagining yourself living at 9 West 57th Street overlooking the park in this beautiful office, someday you will get there, but you got to take today's step first. And then you got to take another step.
Right. The journey of 1,000 miles is just a lot of steps. It's not one leap, right?
Yeah. And you're not going to get there because what will happen is you'll push something too hard, you'll push something too quickly.
Yeah. It's very, Glenn and I were teaching earlier today, sort of our rise and fall, and it's ironic. If you went back and just, the same thing happened to us. We had a down 12% day, August 5th of 2011. Similarly, what triggered you in 98 was, if I recall, was the Russia, or was that the long-term capital?
Long-term capital was Russia devaluation. They defaulted on their bonds. You also had Thailand had a baht crisis. They had a currency crisis there, and they started devaluing their currency, which we called Asian contagion.
Yeah.
It basically rippled through the currency markets in Asia, and we weren't hedged for it. We weren't anticipating it, and we were levered long. When the market dropped 15, we dropped 30, and then in order to get ourselves out of it, we were selling our margin off. And lo and behold, we're down 40, down 50, and it was a very painful reversal. And so what happens is, in your life, you can take this to the bank. You think you're smarter than your parents. Trust me. Okay. And then the other thing you think is, boy, your parents made a lot of mistakes, but you're not going to make any of them. You're going to be a more perfect version of your parents. And then as you're growing up, you look in the mirror one day and you say, holy shit, I'm my father. I mean, I just became him. And it's a little embarrassing. Progressive has an insurance commercial about this. You probably have seen it on the TV. And you're looking around and you're saying, so you're really not that much different. Now you can take comfort in that, or you can go out and put a tattoo on your ass somewhere to make yourself feel different, but you're really not that much different. There is a certain systematic approach that you can take, and there are certain levels of principles that you can uphold to that will, by and large, make you successful. If you deviate from those, you run the risk of generating very high volatility, not only in your investment portfolio, but in your business. And what you don't want to do is get into a business or get a reputation as a business owner that you have an unstable employment program. You want to be in a position where you're hiring gradually, you're thinking about your business incrementally, and you're building your investment book incrementally as well.
So, by the way, so now you're down 50. You got into a hole. In an attempt to get out of the hole, you dug yourself deeper. So you violated the... By the way, this is what I just taught them what we did, okay? Yeah. So I'm not criticizing. We did the same damn thing 13 years later.
I'm happy to share and express it because if it prevents you from doing it,
you bet.
God bless.
You bet. That's what we try and teach here. Not only the smart things we did, but the dumb things we did, right? So the first rule of holes is when you're in one, stop digging. You and I both violated that rule. How did you recover psychologically and literally financially? Did all your investors, you've put up great numbers and then boom, you're down 50%? Did everybody redeem? How did you save your business?
I want you to think about this. We had $200 million. It went to 360. We were down 50%. So now the 360 is 180. So the clients were down 10%. So they had a rocket ride. And they went down 10%. And so right then and there, that rocket ride triggered half of the clients to leave. And so we went from 180 to 90, and we opened 1999 at 90. And 99 was a good year, and 2000 was a good year up until the NASDAQ crisis, but we were already in an unlevered position. And so we rebuilt the business at those lower numbers, but there was no reason to go through that volatility. There was no reason to go through that curve. Other than greed, arrogance, hubris, and the foibles that are already baked into the primordial nature of your personality.
Questions? Kasana?
Yeah. Hi. So we have a mutual friend, Jamie Lewis. Anyway, she says hi.
What's she doing now? I haven't seen her in a while.
She's at Drunken.
Oh, she's there. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
with Stan and Michael.
Yeah.
Michael Clark. Yep, I know Jamie.
But anyway, I don't know. Anyway, so do you feel value investing works?
A really good question. So what's happened now is that there's been an evolvement that I think is a very dangerous evolvement, because we had a global economic shock and a financial crisis born primarily from subprime that was a prairie fire that took out the entire market. A $80, $90 billion problem became a $6 trillion problem. And so what the Fed did was they did the easiest thing they could do. They massively stimulated through aggressive monetary policy. And so what happened is you created a 10-year analysis of what works. And what works when the Fed is quantitatively easing and driving down interest rates. What works is being long. What works is a low-cost ETF. What works is an index. What doesn't work is a long-short stock strategy, because just to give you an example, you're brilliant on your shorts. Let's say the market's up 10. You're brilliant on your shorts, and you're up 14. And so you've got 400 basis points of outperformance relative to the market. But now you're short securities, but because of the rising market, your shorts are actually going up, but you're smart. Your shorts go up 6. You're up 4, the markets go up 6, you make 8, you're down 2 relative to the market. And then the Wall Street Journal writes a story about the hedge fund industry, says that you suck, that your performance is below the markets. And so that goes on for 10 years.
For a decade.
And people say, well, why do we need to do anything other than buy an ETF, buy a growth ETF, buy a margined up ETF, buy the FANG stocks? Why do we have to do anything else? And so your question really is, if you really parse your question, is price discovery and security analytics that help you develop a strategy for understanding price in the marketplace still valuable. It's still valuable because it doesn't appear to be, given the last 10 years of economic data. And so the answer to that question is a resounding yes. And rates are going up faster than people expect. I was in Salt Lake City last week. I went to Governor Romney's conference in Deer Valley, but before that I made a presentation in Salt Lake City. And I said, listen, everyone's saying 3 rate hikes, but it's going to be at least 4. And if you think the Fed is independent from the executive branch or the political system in the United States, you haven't been paying close enough attention since the financial crisis. It's obviously not. And so when I was in the White House, and it was on a Wednesday, and so since I was only there for one Wednesday, I remember it very well. We were sitting there talking about the Federal Reserve chairman and who it was going to be. And one thing the president said to us, and I had done 26 campaign stops with him, he turned to me and he said, Anthony, do you remember the stop in so-and-so and such and where and so? I said, yes, Mr. President. He said, yeah. He said, that's what we have to do. And what did all that mean? He was basically saying that everywhere he went, in the breadbasket of America, people are not long stocks, they're not long assets, they're working class families, middle class families, who by and large have a home, if they're lucky. The home has debt on it, and they have a savings account at their local community bank, where their savings ranges from $15,000 to $20,000 of savings. And the litany of complaints, the presidential candidate at that time, was, what happened to my CD? Mr. President, I'm getting 90 basis points on my 18-month CD. What happened to my CD? And of course, he would turn to them and say, well, that's the Fed, and the Fed is helping the rich people, and it's not helping the poor people, and I'm going to change that. And so that's why I said last week in Salt Lake, and I'm expressing it to you, the rates are going to go way higher. Not way higher, that's an exaggeration. They're going to ratchet up faster than people anticipate, because when he returns to the campaign trail and he goes back into those areas, he wants their CDs to be 2.5%, 3%, 4%. Look at his telling you, I know the guy, I know his personality, I know the conversation he had with Jerome Powell. So in an environment like that, Sandra, value investing is going to be fantastic, because as you return to a normalized interest rate environment, which is normal for an industrial economy, which is normal for the template of growth and the size and scale of the economy, you will start having winners and losers again in the stock market. And so therefore, value investing is about to come back into vogue. And 5 years from now, someone may be writing, geez, do you think ETFs are dead? Do you think ETFs are not the place to go? Well, another thing about the ETFs that I'm super worried about is in August of 2005, a group of ETFs decoupled from their underlying securities. Everybody remember that? So you were seeing 6-7% downdrafts when that happens. And so the ETF is being sold here, but the stock is either falling faster or not falling enough. And that differential, that disparity in the arbitrage, because they have to trade in sync, caused a huge downdraft in the market in August of 2015. And so you have to be very, very careful. If every elephant is leaving the tent at the same time, you could be in a big liquidity crisis in these ETFs. More reason why value investing is going to come back in vogue. And I don't know if any of you guys would remember this, but maybe Whitney would, or Glenn. You remember the 7-day auction preferred market? Do you remember that market? Okay, so when I was a private banker, we had a 7-day auction preferred market where companies and businesses would, you would call your high net worth individual and say, hi, high net worth individual, I can give you 100 basis points here at Goldman Sachs or in this locked up securities fund, or I can put you in the 7-day auction preferred market, you'll get 160 basis points. But it's 7 days and it's liquid, and at the end of 7 days, you'll get your money back and it's all hunky-dory. And that worked for 15 years until the financial crisis came in September of 2008, and those auction preferred markets locked up, and you couldn't get your money out of them. Okay, just look up the auction preferred market, and some of those markets were so locked that it took 5 or 6 years to eventually get your money out of the securities that you had bought, thinking that you had a 7-day lock.
Right. Supposedly they were cash. That's what
supposedly they were cash.
Safe and cash.
So this is what I'm trying to tell you. You have to look at this not in a 5-year perspective or a 10-year perspective, but a 50 and 100-year perspective. And so yes, I do believe that not only is value investing super important at this stage in the market cycle, it's way more important than it has been at any time in the last 10 years. Yes, Elizabeth.
Thanks so much for coming this afternoon. When you were on the sell side at Goldman, thinking about launching your own fund business, were there certain core competencies that you sought to develop, and what were they?
Okay, so it's a really good question. So when I was on the sell side, in my case, I was actually on the mini buy side of the sell side. So I was in private wealth management, and I had a collection of accounts. I had high net worth individuals that had entrusted me and my partner with their money. And so we had them in stock and bond portfolios. And then, there's an old adage on Wall Street, don't confuse brains with a bull market. And so what was happening is the market was rising, and my partner and I were getting the benefit of that. And you can take this to the bank, and politicians actually know this. Most things in life are situational. But if you're a good marketer, you can personalize them. Okay, and so what do I mean by that? If we're having an economic boom, it's Bill Clinton's boom. If we're having a recession, it's George Herbert Walker Bush's recession. You see what I'm saying? So we were having a rising tide in the stock market, and it got personalized onto me and Andy. And so therefore, I was then able to go to my clients and say, hey, I'd like to leave your bond portfolio here with my friend Whitney, who's staying at Goldman, or your stock portfolio where I'm very skilled and look at this great performance. By the way, a lot of it was bull market, right? It was going up. I said, I'd like to take your money. And so the answer to your question is yes, the core competencies were client service, number one, money management skills. And then when I was thinking about leaving, it took me about 12 months to put it together, I started to build the framework around compliance and where do you domicile the assets and what are the rates for that domiciliary and where should the fund's asset be. And then I made a decision, and I hope you'll make the same decision. I made a decision never to have a personal account. I made a decision to take all of my money and put it in the fund alongside of my investors, because I never wanted to be in a situation where somebody turned to me and said, the market went down 10, your personal portfolio went up 5, you're a low life and you're an ethical guy for me. When I started Scaramucci Capital, I put all my money in the fund. I have 2 trusts, or 3 trusts actually, set up for my children, and I had them run by a friend of mine in Newburgh, Vermont, in a blind trust. So I don't know if there's stocks in there, I don't know if there's bonds in there. I get a report at the end of the year from my accountant what the value is, and I use that to pay their tuitions or whatever the things that are going on. Why? When the SEC knocks on the door, the first thing they're going to do is look at your personal trading history. They're going to see if you're front running your fund. They're going to see if you took a cherry pick deal, put it in your personal account, and you left your investors in a disadvantaged position relative to yourself. So you can't do that if you don't have a personal account. Okay, I'm 30 years on Wall Street, no U4 violations, no ADD Part 1 or Part 2 violations, and I'm very, very proud of that because it's in the system. It's how you set yourself up that will be the most protective. Okay, and so you have to tire yourself to the mast sometimes and avoid the temptations. So those are the things that I was thinking about, Elizabeth, when I was putting the business together. I know, I'm going to take 2 more questions because I got to get ready for this boxing match. I'll take these 3 questions. Go ahead. First 2, and then do you have one, sir? Or no? No, okay. These 3 questions.
Okay, I was just curious what motivated your career decision. So why did you choose investing over law after graduating from law school? And then if you had stayed in the White House longer, do you think you would have wanted to stay in politics longer as opposed to returning to finance? Yeah,
it's a good question. So I chose the law because you're looking at somebody that was incredibly naive at that time. I'm actually still naive, we'll talk about that in a second, but I was 21 years old, I was at Tufts University, I was a junior there, and Time Magazine had an article that they were paying lawyers at Cravath, Swaine & Moore $65,000 US as a starting salary. My dad's peak earnings was about $36,000, and so I was 21. I said, oh my God, I can take a job at this firm, Cravath, Swaine & Moore, a WASP firm that would have never hired me, by the way, just so you know. And what's going to happen is I'm going to make the $65,000, okay, and I'm going to be richer than my father and never have to worry about money. And that is literally the limited stupidity of me going to law school. So now I applied to these law schools, I had very high grades, I got into Harvard. I went to Harvard Law School and I started to discover that it wasn't my calling, I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I walked across the campus, over the bridge, over to the Harvard Business School where Whitney went, and anybody that's really honest, okay, had Harvard Business School campus envy. Okay, these guys had this amazing campus. We had this shithole that was built in like 1810 or something like that. And they had all these rich people that were pouring new buildings into them left and right. The Shad Gym, you remember the Shad Gym?
Yeah, we took the 20 million of ethics money, built a gym.
Right, exactly. So we had exactly. So we were all in envy and awe of that. And so I started signing myself up for interviews with investment banks and asset managers.
Were you able to take any classes over there? Was that allowed, or you couldn't do that?
So I was, but you were only limited to one. I don't know what it's like now. You're only limited to 1 class a semester, but it had to be in your 3rd year. So I could only take 2 classes at the Harvard Business School, and I did. I took 2 classes over there. I took one that was taught by John Thain. Remember John? He went on to become the president of the New York Stock Exchange and ran CIT. He was the CEO of Merrill during the crisis. He was very, very smart. Learned a lot from him. And you remember David Darst? Yeah, I took one from him. They're both Goldman guys.
But you did the interviewing process over at HBS into the business world. You did not try and get a job at the white shoe law firm.
So I had an offer from a white shoe law firm, but those 2 guys were professors of mine that worked at Goldman, and so those 2 guys were really instrumental in me getting hired into Goldman.
Thain and Durst.
Yeah, Thain and Durst. Yeah. So that's the story of how I got into the business. Very, very accidental. The White House stuff is also accidental because I had a friend of mine that I've known for 20 years that decided to run for president. I thought he was joking. I said, it's like a joke. So I'm not running for president, okay? He wanted to bet me, okay, just so you know. I didn't take the money because I was like, first of all, I wasn't 100% confident we were going to win. I don't like losing money, but he was out there ready to bet me that I was going to get annihilated. And to your credit, you ate crow at the end there. I did. Sent me a very nice letter. But the Orange Maniac is running for president. And he's right over here in the Trump Tower. He's explaining to me what he's going to do. I said, "You're completely crazy. You're not doing it. I'm going to go work with Governor Walker, and then I'm going to go work for Governor Bush. So my clients were Governor Bush." And then he says to me, "Well, if I do it, and I knock those two guys off the board, because of course I'm going to cream those two guys, if I do it and I cream those two guys, you come work for me." I said, "Yeah, 100%. That's not going to happen. You're not going to do this. It's publicity stuff." And so he creamed those two guys, and then back over at Trump Tower, sitting there in the room, and then me and Steve Mnuchin put the financial plan together for him to raise the capital. And then that's when my buddy, whose nickname I won't say in front of the camera, Reince Priebus, did everything he could through political manipulations and chicanery to block me from the job that the president promised me. And so my mistake was I allowed my ego and my pride to get in the way. Okay, he won and I lost. I should have stayed at Scaramucci. But he won and I lost. I went down and had lunch with the president. And the president said, "Man, you were right about these guys. They suck." That would include Bannon and Priebus. And he said, "We got to get rid of these guys." I said, "No problem." He said, "Well, why don't you come in here and help me get rid of these guys?" Pride and ego. I was saying, "Yeah, I definitely want to do that." Now, let me just tell you something. If you're starting a job in the White House, you shouldn't show up the first day with a chainsaw and a hockey mask. What I did was I put the hockey mask on, I started the chainsaw, and I went after them.
You front stab him.
Yeah, front stab. I went after those two guys with a hockey mask on and a chainsaw. And then, of course, I made a mistake with the interview. And if you guys are stupid, you can think I got fired for that. But if you're smart, you know I didn't. Okay, the president loved that. He thought it was great. Okay, I got fired because I was reporting directly to the president. And John Kelly did not want that. He didn't want somebody with my personality and my closeness to the president to be in there with him and the president. And so he used the interview as a way to get me fired. And it was a lot of tumult at the time. And the president basically doesn't talk to John Kelly anymore. Okay, he'll be long gone from the White House. Because it's exactly what I predicted. John Kelly, who acts like a church lady, okay, is basically not the right personality for Donald Trump. See that? Is that obvious to everybody? You probably read the newspaper, right? So that was a mistake. Okay, it almost cost me my marriage. I was this close to getting divorced, which I've subsequently patched up. And I should have left my company. It almost cost me my company because they then politically tied me up in CFIUS. They just allowed Genworth to go through CFIUS, but Skybridge Capital, which was 10% of the size of Genworth, was blocked for national security reasons. Got that? You got that? Okay, so that's how Washington works. If you think you're working on Wall Street and it's rough, the worst person that you'll meet on Wall Street is the highest ethical standard in Washington. So I'm gonna do that. Okay. I got to go to Steve Colbert.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Anthony.
so much.
Take care.
Okay, but you can do this. Okay, that's the message. Okay, you can do this, but you got to think about it. You have to systematize it, and you got to get people around you that really like you. So when you're having a bad day, you can call them up and they can coach you through things. Okay, people like Whitney and Glenn, etc. Okay, hey, that's
Thank you. Thank you.